Okay, all right, so let's take a look at the fluent meaning of the verse number 6. Kalla innal insana layatgha. What does it mean? No, but indeed man transgresses. So let's talk about what is transgression. Why do people transgress? You know why people transgress is because people start thinking about that they are free of any need, right? Because man thinks that whatever he has is because of his own capabilities, right? And he feels that he has all the power. You know why people who were tyrants in the past, why the kings, why they used to become tyrants is because they used to feel all power of what all they could do, and that they had the power to do anything. Now, how do people become tyrants? You know, the biggest thing is arrogance. Have you ever seen anybody who walks with arrogance? You know, somebody who walks with like like shaking their hands and walking all over the place and feeling so proud with their chest all the way out, right? Sometimes people think they have all the power. Who has ever seen a bully in a school, right? People who have ever been bullied, do you know that's how the bullies typically walk? Very arrogantly, right? They think that they have control over everybody and nobody can do anything to them, right? That's what happens. Now, power corrupts people. Now, whether that's power of wealth, whether that's power of information, power of knowledge that people have, who typically reads Surah Kaf on Fridays? Surah Kaf, right? That's some of the lessons that we draw from Surah Kaf. It talks about somebody who had a lot of power and he became arrogant, right? But it also talks about other people like Zulkarnain who had a lot of power, but he did not become arrogant, right? So again, knowledge can corrupt, power can corrupt, and power can come from wealth. It can come from all from a bunch of other things. Now, why do people get corrupt? Because they do not have any fear of checks and balances, right? If there is no check and balance at home, do you think kids can become corrupt too? Can they? Yes? Okay, that's true. That happens. Now, if there is no accountability, right? If a person thinks that they will not be responsible for their actions and there will be no consequences, people become corrupt. That's how the nations of the past, they became corrupt, because they thought that whatever they were doing was only for the world, and that was it. That there was not going to be any consequence after they were going to die. And that's how people became corrupt, because they thought, there is nobody to ask us for. What do you think the people, the Christians, what do they believe? Anybody knows? They believe what? That you're going to go straight to heaven, right? And what else do they believe? That Jesus died because, to basically, and that is all for everybody's sins, right? That he had paid his blood for everybody else's sins, right? And we know that is not true. Everybody, each one of us is responsible for our own actions. There is going to be a consequence, right? So what are some of the lessons that we can draw that I want you to write down in your books? The lessons that we can draw from just this verse. One thing is, all of us are accountable, okay? And I want you guys to write these lessons down in your copies, in your notes at the back of the page, okay? All of us are accountable for everything that we do, right? We are responsible for our actions. We do not want to transgress. We need to keep ourselves in check. Against what? What do we want to keep ourselves in check with? How do we check if we are doing the right things? How do we check? What's our measure to say that we are doing something right or we are doing something wrong? Anybody? What's our measure? There's only two measures. It's just Quran and Sunnah. That's the only way we can measure if we are doing something right or if we are doing something wrong. Because there is guidance for us in all matters of life in Quran and Sunnah. Okay? And one thing that all of us need to remember that we talked about is we should not be arrogant, right? Some of you may have capabilities that others don't have. Some of you may be good at sports, right? But don't become arrogant because of that you are the only one who's ever in the world, right? Some of you may have more knowledge, let's say on computers, for example. Don't become arrogant because of that you know more than the other person, right? Some of you may be smart in math, right? But don't become arrogant. Don't think you know more than the person who is not as good as you are, right? Because the other person could be good in something else that you might not be good at, right? So always remember that. And that is same is true even between brothers and sisters, right? Some of us can be good at one thing at home, others could be good at something else at home. But don't become arrogant because of that. Don't treat your siblings or the people who are around you and downplay their efforts because they may not be as good as doing something that you might be good at. Okay? And the last thing is be humble, because humility is what is going to take you places in this world and in the hereafter. Okay? It's always the people who go to the top and people that get respect are the people who humble themselves. Okay? All right. So let's go to the next ayah. Now, one thing to remember, and this is a quick hadith here, is the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that truth leads to piety and piety leads to Jannah. And the man who persists in speaking the truth till he is recorded with Allah as a truthful man. Now, what that means is that the lesson that we draw out of this is never lie under any circumstances. Okay, never ever lie, because always remember is that if you say a lie to cover something up, you have to speak another lie to cover that lie, and then one more lie, and then one after the other, and then very soon it becomes a snowball effect. At the end, a lie never helps anybody. You can get away with things now, but at some point in time, liars get caught. Okay, it may be in a day, it may be in a year, it could be 10 years later. And many of us have seen news around us where things have come out for people from like 30 years ago, right? So never lie about anything that we do. Now, there's also a hadith of Rasulullah where he said that a person or a Muslim cannot do two things. And one of those things is he can never lie. Okay, so as Muslims, we should always remember to speak the truth. Okay? Verse number 7. So let's take a look at the fluent meaning of this verse. Arra'a hustaghna. What that means is because he sees himself as self-sufficient. Now, what is self-sufficiency? Self-sufficient is a person who thinks that he has control over everything. When kids are small, who has seen like a younger sibling in their life? Or a young child, like a 1-year-old. Have you ever seen a 1-year-old, right? Or a 6-month-old, or a 2-year-old, right? All of us have, right? What do? They have to rely on their parents for pretty much many things, right? Sometimes they cannot eat by themselves. Sometimes if they're too young, they cannot even walk by themselves. They have to rely on their parents. But as kids grow up, right? And they get to 10 years, 11 years, 12 years, 13 years, they become more and more self-sufficient, right? They start doing things on their own. And what happens is that we start thinking that we can take care of things on our own, right? Sometimes it happens that parents will tell you something, and then you might say, don't worry about it, I know it, right? And that is an attitude that sometimes kids can have. But remember that we are not self-sufficient for everything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us capabilities to do more and more things as we grow up, but the attitude that we need to have is not of self-sufficiency, right? Now, do you folks know that there is a lot of challenge in our society right now with the suicide rate among kids going up. Why does that happen? That happens because kids start thinking that they have become more self-sufficient. They stop communicating with their parents, and then they think they can handle everything. But the fact is that they cannot. And it is always good to talk to the peers around you. It could be your parents, it could be somebody elder in your family that you trust, right? But if you start becoming self-sufficient, if you start thinking that you can handle everything, it will get to a point where it becomes too much. So what are really some of the lessons that we can draw from this? Lessons that I want you guys to write down. One is, always know that all the blessings that you have, all the capabilities that you have is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? We did not learn to eat food by our own self. Allah taught that to us over time, right? If you are good at sports, if you can play well, if you can play soccer very well, you did not learn that the very first day. You were not born with it. That was learned over time. But there are other things that you probably are still learning, right? That you will probably become good at, but never think that you are self-sufficient. Now, the other lesson is all capabilities and abilities Allah has given you for something. Okay, there is some good use. There is a reason why Allah has given you the capabilities that you have. It is up to us to know how we can use those capabilities, right, for our betterment and for the betterment of the people around us. Always be thankful, okay? Have a smile on your face and be grateful. Anything that anybody does to you, be grateful for that, right? And we've already talked about being humble. People who are grateful, they get more of good things. Okay, there's an ayah in the Quran that we will also see a little bit later, which talks about that. Okay. So what is this showing you? You know, this is somebody who is carrying everything on his back, right? Saying he's self-sufficient, that he has everything. He can grow things. He has, things that he has to grow the food, and then he can eat the food and do whatever he wants. But in reality, each one of us needs somebody else for something, right? We cannot do everything on our own, okay? So again, we just need to be very, very careful about this and know that we have to be thankful for everything that we have, okay? All right, so let's talk about verse number 8, the fluent meaning of that first. Verse number 8. Inna ila rabbika ruja. What does that mean? That means indeed to your Lord is the return. Okay. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that after the first two verses, right? And think about the meaning that we did for the first two verses. Now, in the previous verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was talking about what? He was talking about that you should not transgress, right? He also talked about that man thinks himself as self-sufficient. Now Allah is saying, basically, telling everybody, each one of us, that you are going to go back to Allah. Each one of us. This is an ayah for each one of us. That we will eventually die and we will go back to Allah. Whether that happens 60 years from today or that could happen tomorrow. Right? None of us are guaranteed the next 60 years. So that can happen to anybody, any one of us. So what are some of the lessons that we can draw from this? Lessons, again, I want you to write down. Okay, one thing is, there is no escape if we do not correct ourselves, if we need to be corrected. Okay, there is no escape if we do not correct ourselves, if we need to be corrected. This is another lesson in here is for the people who do evil things. This is a reminder that Allah is giving to them that you are going to come back to Allah, that you are eventually responsible, you will be held responsible for the things that people do. On the other side, this is a blessing for the believers, right? So the lesson is, this is a blessing for the believers because going back to Allah is where all the rewards are going to be. And the last thing is that we want to consider this as a blessing and not a warning, because it's a blessing for the believers, but it's a warning for the people who do evil things. Okay? And to him you shall return. So who's ever been to a graveyard? Has any of you ever gone to a graveyard? Okay, has any of you ever seen when they dig the grave? Have you ever seen it before before the body goes into the grave, obviously, but have you ever seen like an empty grave? Okay, how deep it is? It's about 10 feet. Like anybody else? 10 feet, 9 feet, 12 feet, something like that, right? It's not that deep, right? 10 feet, 12 feet is not that much. So that is where all of us are going to go. Has any of you ever laid down in a grave when it was empty? Okay. Has any of you ever laid down, let's say in a box? It doesn't have to be like a big box, but just a box, right? When you were playing at home, right? Many of you, right? And sometimes, if there's like a lid on the box, you can sometimes close the lid and you're playing with somebody else and, it all becomes very dark, right? The grave is going to be very dark, right? So we always need to remember that all of us are going back to Allah, right? Whatever we do in this life, you will get rewarded or punished depending on what we did. All people go to Allah after their death. The wise man is the one who goes to Allah before their death. What does that mean? What does going back to Allah means? Going back to Allah means worshipping Allah. But what is worshipping Allah? What does it mean by worship Allah? Remember Allah. What else? Say again. Worship Allah. Say again. Praying to Allah. Okay. What else? What else does it mean? Repent. But eventually, what are we here to do? We just need to, Rosine, read the Quran, right? But why do we read the Quran? To know what? Huh? The way of life. Because Allah has told us what to do in this life, right? All we want to do is just obey Allah. There are very simple things that Allah has given us on what to do and what not to do. And that's really all we want to do. Okay, so again, the thing here is that we just don't need to be scared about going back to Allah. We just need to be prepared. So the lesson is, prepare for where you're going. Because, if you guys we're going to travel to California, you will probably do some preparations, right? You will pack some boxes, put some things together, ready to go to California. We know that we are all going back to Allah. So we just need to prepare to be able to do so. Okay. All right. So verse number 9. أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يَنْهَى. Have you seen the one who forbids? So a quick lesson that we learn out of this ayah is that if we are not doing good, we should not stop others from doing good. Okay, that's a lesson that I want you to write down as well. Something for us to remember. That if others are doing good, don't stop them. Okay, because sometimes what happens is people can put others down and say, oh, why are you doing so much effort? But if others are doing good, encourage them. If we are not doing good ourselves, at least let's not stop anybody from doing good also. Okay? Verse number 10. Abdan iza salla. A servant when he prays. Now, these ayahs, they were revealed, even though there is nobody mentioned by name in these ayahs were revealed pointing to one specific person, but it is for all of us also. Now, if we see, so anybody knows who was Abu al-Hakim? Who knows who was Abu Jahl? Everybody knows who was Abu Jahl, right? His actual name was Abu al-Hakim. Okay? And he was called Abu Jahl because Jahl really means somebody who's ignorant. That is why he's called Abu Jahl, right? Because he was a very ignorant man. And these ayahs were actually revealed because he was trying to stop Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he was praying. And these ayahs were to let him know that you are coming back to Allah. Don't stop people from when they're doing good, right? Now, the lesson that, obviously what this talks about is no matter how intelligent or wise somebody is, it doesn't really lead them to Islam, right? You may think of somebody who's very intelligent, but that doesn't really mean that they will follow the teachings of Islam also, right? We don't have to be wise and intelligent. We just have to have the attitude of being humble and have a listening ear. So the lesson that we draw out of this one is, are all of us praying on time? Are we praying to Allah? What was Abu Jahl doing? He was, trying to prevent Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and preventing him from remembering Allah. Is each one of us remembering Allah? Are we praying our prayers on time? Right? Are we calling others in our house to pray prayers on time? Right? That's what all of us need to remember. So do not cooperate in sin and aggression with anybody. Okay? This is another verse from the Quran. So verse number 11. أَرَأَيْتَ إِنْ كَانَ عَلَى الْهُدَى. Have you seen if he is upon guidance? And then the next verse that we will also cover with this one. So this one, أَرَأَيْتَ إِنْ كَانَ عَلَى الْهُدَى. Have you seen if he is upon guidance? The next verse, أَوْ أَمَرَ بِالتَّقْوَى, or enjoins righteousness. Now what does that mean? That means whoever from amongst you sees an evil should change it by his hand. If he is unable to do so, then he should change it by his tongue. And if he is unable to do so, then he should reject it in the heart. And this is the weakest of Iman. We've heard of this hadith many times before, right? What this really means is that, again, we should take part in spreading good and not spreading evil. Okay? The success depends upon spreading good, but also forbidding evil. This is what this ayah means in the Quran. Some of the lessons that we draw from this is, when you know you have something, be generous with it. Whatever you have, whether it's your skill. So if you know soccer, right, teach somebody. If you're good at something else, teach somebody. If you know the Quran, teach somebody. But be generous with your skills. The next lesson is, we need to spread the message of Islam, which is to obey Allah and His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We always need to work to be successful. Because, see, remember, even in this world, they tell you have to work hard to do whatever you're going to do. Whether you want to become a doctor, if you want to become an engineer, if you want to be good at sports, you have to work hard at it. What you want to play soccer, basketball, whatever you want to do, right? So success does not come without any effort. So effort has to be there. The other lesson that we draw from this is that if you see something, for example, in your schools or wherever you study, right? We need to, if you see something evil happening, if you see a bully, bullying somebody, stop it, right? Don't take part in it. Don't just walk away, thinking that, it doesn't have anything to do with me. Okay, because again, we need to be spreading good and not spreading evil. Okay? And then the last lesson out of this is, give everyone their right. What that means is, there is a right that everybody has, even in your house. Your parents have a right on you. Your siblings have a right on you. Your neighbors have a right on you. How many of you, if you see your neighbor, you walk up to them and say hello to them? If you do, that's awesome. If you don't, let's start doing it. Okay, because again, people will see you in action when you do that. Doesn't matter whether your neighbor is Muslim or not. Okay? How many of you, when you see an uncle, right, at a masjid, you go up and say salam to them first, versus them coming over and saying salam to you? If you do so, that's awesome. If you don't, start doing it. Okay? Be the first to do the good thing. Don't be the last. Inshallah. Okay? All right. Jazakumullah khair. So that was our